there's nobody signed up for,
There was someone signed up for the public hearing.
was it?
There was, yes.
Not on my sheet.
We were outside.
Okay.
Did you have that?
I see. I know what it looks like.
Public comment?
Where's the, how are you?
Did
Here you come.
somebody check his ID?
Yeah, he's the head of the department here.
All right, so public comment, we have one person signed up. David?
Yes, my name is David Grider. I'm the Executive Director of the Preservation Society of Nashville, so thank you all for letting me jump into your committee meeting real quick. I have a comment here from our Board of Directors I'd like to share with you. So in recent weeks, our leadership team has engaged with Mayor O'Connell, Planning Director Lucy Kemp, and also leaders, actually, that's Tim. Come on in. I realized who it is, Tim. You definitely
No, that's quite all right.
Yeah. As I was saying, in recent weeks, our leadership team has engaged with Mayor O'Connell, Planning Director Lucy Kemp, and leaders of the Metro Historic Commission, council members, neighborhood advocates, and downtown business owners. One thing is abundantly clear, that everyone loves Nashville and wants to see it thrive, but how we thrive, especially with preservation, we need a unified voice for that, and also unified vision going forward. And so PSN, we've developed a clear, proactive plan for preservation that includes protecting the autonomy and resources of the Metro Historic Commission, integrating processes and safeguarding historic zoning functions, and developing a comprehensive preservation strategy that aligns with and enhances Nashville's long-term growth. Now, the substitute ordinance before you today reflects many of these same priorities. While no legislation is perfect, this version represents a significant step in the right direction from the original legislation. And also with the pending legislation looming from the state, we do think that it's a better opportunity of ensuring preservation and safeguarding principles and guidelines for Nashville's future. For that reason, in this committee, we recommend that committee approve the substitute ordinance and move it for a larger conversation at the council level. And for transparency at the council level, once it moves there, that we will also be speaking there in hopes for a deferral for more public comment, which we do feel like we have windows of time to talk about this before the state enacts its pressure, but a little window, but still more time for public comment before anything would move forward. So with that, we thank you for your time, and that's it.
All right, thank you so much. We'll move to item 1, RS 2025-1058, resolution exempting Tantismio, located at 306 46th Avenue North, from the minimum distance requirements, obtained a beer permit pursuant to section 7.08.090.echo the Metro Code.
Move. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any not voting?
Excuse me. I thought he was supposed to bring tacos or something this time.
He should have.
Did he? I thought he
Couldn't
was.
get with my clients beforehand.
Wow.
Just know better next time. Let him slide this time.
What about deferring it until they do?
Yeah, turn to do. I agree.
Too late.
Move to reconsider.
Sorry, point of order.
Okay,
Just recess.
time for the fun one. Here we go. Item number 2, BL 2025-742, ordinance amending the chapter 2.128 Metropolitan Code pertaining to Metro Historic Commission and Metropolitan Historic Zoning Commission.
Move.
Second.
Discussion?
May I present my substitute?
If there's no discussion, do we move to the substitute?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, committee members. So I've filed a substitute ordinance that's been on everybody's desk since yesterday. It's 2 pages long, and on it, what it does, I want to be clear what it doesn't do. It changes no historic or conservation overlays. They all remain as they are today. It retains all current staff. It moves them from one department to another. We have had departmental staff changes and the reorganizations in the past. It's not immediate. The change will take place, in my legislation, should it remain in the substitute, on July 1st of this year. That coincides very well with the budget year, with the fiscal year. What it does do is, the first section, the first section is that today, the historical director in our code, the Metro Historical Commission, the preservation arm of our government, is allowed to hire a director. But the code is silent on whether that director can hire staff or not. We funded that staff as a body. We just need to clean up the code right there, so that's all that the first section does. Nothing else changes. Everything in letter A in the substitute bill is exactly as it is today. It just adds section B there. The next section is the one that where this bill creates an historic zoning administrator. We have somebody with that title today. This codifies that position, so that will, and then it gives them power as the result of that position creation. The criteria for the historic zoning administrator are very similar. In fact, they're word for word the first three qualifications that we require for our executive director of Metro Historic, but it's specific to zoning, not specific to history. It's about specific to Nashville's history relative to zoning, for instance. The next portion of that same section is where we describe the transition of the staff between now and July 1st. It also says in there that the members of the Department of Planning, they shall become members of the Department of Planning and shall retain their civil service status. People in Metro Historic Zoning today have civil service status. That will transfer with them. Planning Department staff today do not have civil service. So these employees will carry that with them. And then the last section is about codes administration, and I would love if we could have a conversation or hear from Mr. Dodd from codes in regards to this section, if it pleases the committee and the chair. Today, if you could just go ahead and speak to that, that'd be great. So the very last section, it takes that historical zoning administrator, and they have to approve the demolition permit process. So yesterday in committee, Director Walker said that this was created a long time ago, maybe 10 plus years ago, to give us time to hopefully preserve those buildings before they get demolished. Developers, as he said yesterday, just work through that process now. They know that that 90 days is a part of their construction timeline, so they do it anyway, they just build it in. I think it would be a function that would serve well, that would be best held within the zoning side of things, because it parallels what we do with codes and the BZA, for instance, today. But I'd love to have your opinion on that, if you could.
Yeah, so
If you could please state your name and title.
Metro Codes. So building and demolition permits, whether they're in a historical overlay or for a historical structure or otherwise, all of them in the county originate with the, well, this is fun.
Can you come up here, Will, so they won't?
They all originate with the codes department and our zoning division. So we consider demolition and building permits to all be zoning permits. That's how it works. You know, we start the process, we filter it out, and there are sign-offs by other departments, including Metro Historic Zoning on relevant properties, and then it comes back to us. So I wanted to make that clear. We consider, we've had a lot of conversations about this. I know I had a conversation with Councilmember Swara, Councilmember Benedict. Anything that comes out of our department we consider to be a zoning issue. And so when it comes to where this would land in the new setup, we would feel most comfortable with it continuing to be a zoning issue to kind of parallel your historic zoning administrator with how we have our zoning administrator set up and so forth.
Okay. Ms. Benedict, you got anything else you want?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind if we could hear from the administration. I have received an update since yesterday in regards to the state legislation that's potentially moving through. Mr. Rosenberg has an update for that on my drive-in today I received, and so I would love it if you could share that information.
Mr. Rosenberg?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My understanding is that if it isn't passed tonight, that at least one of the bills will be put on notice with its amendment tomorrow, with the intent of it being heard in subcommittee in the House next week. And at that point, passage would not be possible with council until April 1st, which would leave ample time for passage at that point. The other bill, we don't know. We haven't heard anything from the people working on that bill and don't know whether something would happen tomorrow or not.
Okay, thank you for that.
I'm sorry, and it would be tomorrow because the deadline to put things on notice and file amendments for the following week is Wednesday.
So my request to the body would be to pass the substitute, then to consider the amendments to the substitute, so that's what I'm bringing to the floor. That's what happened in the planning committee yesterday, was let's get the substitute to the floor. I'll move the substitute on the floor, we'll review the amendments on the floor, and then the body can go from there with the information that we've been provided. So my request from this committee would be to pass that through so we can have that floor discussion.
Okay, any other discussion on the substitute?
If I could ask the administration, could you explain in a little more detail exactly what the state legislation will actually do and why that's important to us in this discussion?
There are two pieces of legislation, neither of which I'm intimately familiar with. I believe one strips historic functions, possibly zoning functions, and the other puts historic functions underneath the planning department in all big four cities.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Someone like to make? Mr. Cooper?
I am Councilmember Jacob Cooper. Thank you for recognizing me, Chair, even though I'm not on the committee. If you don't mind, I'd love to ask a question and then give some thoughts real quick.
Okay, go ahead.
And the question would be to codes. My understanding currently is that the demolition permit of a historic structure, while it is reviewable by your department and by the historic zoning departments, it's not, you can't stop the demolition. There's no mechanism to say, we really want to preserve this building. You can't forcibly stop it, right? It will happen. It's just a 90-day review to understand, preserve, and attempt to work with the individual to save the building.
I would let Historic answer that, because our process is that we need their come off, but we control the actual issuance of the permit ultimately, so.
I'm Tim Walker, the Executive Director of the Metro Historical Commission, and it is just a 90-day hold. It does not prevent demolition of the structure.
Okay.
Just a time for us to have a conversation with the applicant and see if there are alternatives.
Did that answer your question, sir?
I did, thank you. And I'll try to be brief. I know we're kind of crowded into this room. But I really appreciate the sponsors' work on this legislation. I think that there's two things kind of moving at the same time. There is state bills that will remove our ability to regulate historic properties both in the downtown and throughout the city. So that's kind of the stick we're up against. But I also think we've got an opportunity for really good policy here. As someone who has both intimately seen the positives and negatives of the current setup in the downtown core and in neighborhoods, I think that overall there's a lot of really great things that are happening. We know our Historic Zoning Commission has done phenomenal work preserving our city, protecting, growing overlays. At the same time, there are certain process challenges that I have seen, approaches with certain applicants, situations that didn't get to where they should have gotten to, in my opinion. And again, it's not necessarily the results need to change as much as the process can be improved. And through this process, we did discover that the Historic Zoning Commission is staffed by Metro Historic Commission staff through their bylaws. But the Historic Zoning Administrator position hasn't existed at this point. So to me, as someone who cares deeply about historic preservation, I'm fighting right now in my neighborhood, not in an overlay to save a building that is beautifully historic. I'm excited about this. I think that the creation of a Historic Zoning Administrator position with prerequisites that mirror the requirements of the Historic Commission Director, certain degrees, certain demonstrated passion and ability in the historic zoning space, and then putting it with the resources of planning, I think really is going to elevate our ability to do historic preservation. And the last thing I'll say is that we've gotten a lot of emails today in the last couple of days. I've tried to respond to as many as I can. But one thing that does come up that I think is important to clarify, some folks have said, please don't move the Historic Zoning Commission into the Planning Commission. And I know many of y'all know this, but just for the public listening, we're not doing that. This is not moving the Historic Zoning Commission. It's not moving the Planning Commission. Those both continue to have their teeth codified in state and local law. This is a staffing coordination change. So and from what I understand, the Zoning Commission's bylaws give the power or can take the power from that staff member. So there's a lot of control with the Historic Zoning Commission. It doesn't change. That's all protected. And I hope my colleagues support this kind of staffing reorganization.
Anything else? All right, can I get a motion to substitute? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Anyone not voting? All right, so now we move to Amendment 1.
Councilmember Cash is not here, but I'm supportive of this amendment.
Okay.
My understanding, my understanding is it's just kind of the recitals on the front end. Doesn't really change the bill.
Can I get a motion?
Move.
Second?
Any discussion? Can I have a vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Anyone not voting? All right. Amendment 2. Councilmember Suarez.
Thank you, Chair. What Amendment 2 is purporting to do is keep the preservation piece of all of this process with the Historical Commission. Based on my understanding and all the questioning and all the conversation, we're moving the zoning piece, the Metro zoning part of it, under planning for all of that to work. But we're keeping the Historical Commission intact so that they can do preservation work. The way this demolition piece works, based on my conversation with both Director Walker and Mr. Todd right there, is that when code sends that paperwork, they send it to the Historical Commission. Historical Commission staff is the one that goes out. They have to document. This is for properties that are old, not in an overlay, but has historical significance. And so they go in, take pictures, document, do all of that. That's part of their process. And that is currently being done by the Historical Commission. Now, I understand that wanting it to be with the zoning because they work with zoning makes sense, zoning to zoning, but the work is not being done by zoning right now. It's being done by the Historical Commission. It's the historical piece of it that we need to preserve. So what my amendment is basically doing is everything in the substitute stays, but where it says that when it comes to demolition of property that are not in an overlay, where it says it should go to the historical zoning administrator, and we're going to get tongue-tied with all of these names, I'm saying that keep it with the Historical Commission because that is preservation in my own opinion and not zoning, and we need to keep that with the Historical Commission.
Okay, can I get someone on committee to move this to get this before us?
Move.
Second. Okay. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I would like the administration's position on this amendment, if they have one.
Mr. Reservoir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have concerns that it creates some legal risk because the zoning functions aren't entrusted in this ordinance to the Historical Commission. This is a zoning function. There's concerns surrounding the authority there. To Councilmember Suarez's point, historical is going to have to be integrally involved in the process because of the role that they play. So as long as that continues in a cooperative way, we see no downside to leaving it in the hands of the Historic Zoning Commission administrator, and also the opportunity to avoid the legal risk.
Any other discussion? Suarez?
Could Director Walker talk about the process as it is right now? And I know that, I don't know what the legal risk are, I don't want us to get into all of that, but I want to look at what exactly is the function when they get the paper from codes. What happened right now? Director Walker.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. The current process is if there is a demo permit falling on a structure that's National Register eligible or National Register listed, then we're notified by the Codes Department and we go out and meet with the property owner. We immediately contact the council members so they're engaged throughout that process. Ultimately, they are really going to have, in my opinion, the final say in what's done. We almost never hold it up 90 days. This was intended to be a time where we can stop, have a conversation, educate, and document the property, not to hold people up 90 days. It is true, and I said it last night, that many times if a developer has no intention of salvaging or having that conversation, he will work it into his development timeline. But the intent is good. It was created more than 20 years ago when an NR listed property that was pretty significant, it's one of the earliest houses in the county, was demolished. And council's reaction was to give that authority to the director of the Metro Historical Commission. And it's worked very well. Not been as successful as I think we had wished it would be, but it works very well. And it allows us to document those properties at the very least and offer up salvage if there's the option for that.
Yes, sir.
So I'm not sure, let me be clear. So that process will work without this amendment?
We would hope so. Right now, it would change the way the process currently works, but if this amendment doesn't pass, we will hope that we'll continue to work that way.
I'm confused. So is the administration for this amendment or against this? I didn't quite understand from your answer what your position actually is on this
I'm
amendment.
glad you asked. That was going to be my next question.
Because
Sorry for not being clear.
we expected, Dave. We expected.
Against, for the sake of that legal risk with having a position that's not entrusted by the code with zoning authority making a zoning decision.
So that would mean you don't support this amendment?
Correct.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yesterday, thank you, Chair. Yesterday, in committee, Director Kemp talked about an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, in case anybody doesn't know, between the two departments to see about, ways that they can work together and also just the rules of engagement, right, like we see with MOUs. I think this would be a great item to put in the MOU for review, to give the authority to the new historic zoning administrator position, and then have it be in the MOU how that coordination happens. That would be my request. I think it's a good amendment. I just think that I'd rather see this in the MOU than on the bill.
Yeah, I agree. And I would like to see if you would be open if we pass, so we've already passed a substitute, if you would be open to, on the floor, deferring this so that we can have a public hearing. And at that time, I think Councilmember Suarez's amendment would address a lot of the folks that have emailed us and their concerns with how Historic will continue to operate. So are you open to deferring it on floor to have a hearing?
So thank you for that question. I definitely am going to move for a public hearing to be held on March 18th.
Okay.
That's going to be a separate motion away from the bill. I'll need to get the bill substituted on the floor, amended on the floor. Then the order of operations is to determine whether it could be deferred or not. I want, based on the information I got from the administration today, before talking with the administration today, because there's been a change at the state, I was leaning towards a deferral. At this point, I'm up in the air about it. I see the merit in a deferral, but I also have concerns about what Mr. Rosenberg shared with us in regards to the state bringing up the bill to be on the schedule.
Go ahead.
So if we get too far into the deferral process, the state legislature currently is scheduled to adjourn on April 11th. Mechanically, through the council, if we defer it one meeting, then that would, and if it were to pass on the 18th on second, that would mean third reading would be April 1st. We're playing with 10 days there. In the meantime, they could be, and so we've got both the need to improve processes as well as the state, forcing our hand to some degree. And so I want the body to discuss that deferral motion. I'm not against it. I'm not necessarily for it right now, if that's helpful. But I will say that I want the body to discuss it.
If I could ask the legal question real quick. If we defer that in here, that stops her from having the ability to create a public hearing. Is that correct?
I would say it does not stop that because the public hearing motion does not have to happen during the discussion of the bill.
Okay.
So the motion could happen separately if it was deferred in this committee.
Okay. Thank you.
So just to close the loop on my point, so I want to hold at this time and support in the amendment. I know I second the motion to hear it because I wanted to hear from Councilmember Sawyer, because I highly respect her. But Councilmember Benedict's substitute was based on, the questions, the back and forth that we all had on Council Connect, and, the questions that she got answered from Ms. Kemp. And I feel confident with the substitute, and then moving that and hearing if, some other colleagues would be open to, the public hearing. But I don't want to go forward with the amendment to sort of constrain us where we are.
Any other discussion? Should we do a vote on Amendment 2? All those in favor? All those opposed? Anyone not voting? Okay. Now move to Amendment number 3.
I'm supportive of this amendment. I don't know if Councilmember Gadd is not in here, but I'm supportive of this amendment.
Okay.
Could you explain what the amendment does?
Yep. I don't have it in front of me, but as I recall, can you?
Yeah, do you want me to?
Go ahead.
So this would just state that employees of historic zoning, future employees, should have experience in historic preservation. That would go into the new historic zoning staff section.
Okay.
Move. Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of Amendment 3?
Aye.
All those opposed? Anyone not voting? All right, so now can we get a motion for substitute as amended?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Anyone not voting? Okay,
Thank you.
we shall adjourn. Thank you all so much for being here.
Okay, so it takes